For generations, the first of these forbidden relics has lingered in a web of silence. A palm-sized obsidian disc purportedly recovered from a collapsed chamber beneath the ancient city of Ugarit. Descriptions of the artifact are inconsistent, most of them filtered through second-hand testimonies or leaked conservators' notes, yet all accounts agree on its unsettling precision. The disc bears concentric etchings, too fine for Bronze Age tools, as if carved by a method that has left no trace elsewhere in the archaeological record. Scholars who examined it briefly before it vanished into a private vault noted that the outer rings correspond uncannily to lunar cycles, while the inner pattern seems to encode the precession of Earth's axis, knowledge that should have been far beyond the reach of any culture of its era. What alarmed researchers even more was the faint magnetization locked within the stone, behaving like a fragment of an ancient navigational instrument. Whispers within academic circles claim that early analyses revealed a mapping system referencing star positions not as they appear today, but as they would have appeared more than 12,000 years ago, hinting at a cultural memory stretching back to a time conventional history declares empty of civilization. The ink was barely dry on the preliminary report before the artifact was removed, catalogs amended, and photographs sealed under non-disclosure orders. Those who worked closest to it speak of an abrupt shift from curiosity to containment, as if the discovery's implications posed a threat to established timelines. Whether the disc represents a remnant of a forgotten scientific tradition or a relic of an unknown civilization, its suppression has only amplified the mystery surrounding it, leaving behind a silence that feels calculated, deliberate, and strangely protective. The second relic surfaces briefly in the historical record before disappearing into the same void of institutional secrecy that has claimed so many anomalous discoveries. Known informally as the Basalt Codex, it was uncovered during a routine survey near the Lake Tana headwaters in Ethiopia, sealed inside a hollow pillar of stone as if deliberately entombed. Carved not on clay or parchment, but on thin plates of black volcanic rock, the codex contains symbols that resemble no known script. Linguists initially dismissed the markings as decorative motifs, yet spectrographic analysis detected micro-abrasions consistent with intentional engraving, executed with an accuracy suggesting the use of advanced tools. Even more troubling for Orthodox chronology, fragments of organic material trapped within the pillar's interior dated the codex's last sealing to nearly 9,000 years ago. Eyewitness notes from the dig team describe the relic as strangely warm to the touch despite ambient temperatures, as though it retained a faint internal resonance. Some researchers speculated that the codex might encode astronomical or mathematical information, but before the hypothesis could be tested, a foreign delegation, affiliated with a cultural preservation partnership whose name appears nowhere in public registries, arrived unannounced. The codex was quietly transferred, the excavation site restricted, and the official report reduced to a few unremarkable lines about geological formations of non-cultural significance. Independent scholars attempting to revisit the site later found it buried under layers of backfill and fenced with military-grade barriers. The few surviving rubbings reveal odd symmetry in the glyphs, as though they map cyclical movements of the heavens rather than language. If this interpretation is correct, it would imply that the codex's creators possessed an observational precision rivaling early classical astronomers, yet emerging from a culture presumed pre-literate. Its confiscation suggests not merely an effort to avoid controversy, but a deeper unease, perhaps the fear that the codex might illuminate a chapter of human history that existing narratives cannot easily contain. The third relic, remembered only through scattered archival letters and a blurred photograph, is the so-called Vessel of Ashur, unearthed during a clandestine French expedition along the Tigris in the late 1890s. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than a bronze container, tapered like a ceremonial libation cup.
Yet those who cataloged it noted that its alloy composition defied replication, containing trace elements distributed with an intentionality inconsistent with ancient smelting techniques. What set the vessel apart, however, was the residue found within, a crystalline powder whose molecular structure did not match any known mineral. Early laboratory notes described the substance as reacting to heat in a way that produced a patterned vibration, almost musical in its modulation, as though encoded with information rather than existing as a simple compound. The expedition's lead researcher wrote of the vessel's impossible resonance, claiming that when the powder was agitated, it emitted a faint luminescence that pulsed in intervals corresponding to a repeating sequence of prime numbers. This detail, buried in a private journal discovered decades later, has fueled speculation that the vessel served some ceremonial or communicative function, perhaps as part of a forgotten priestly technology. Whatever the truth, the artifact's presence provoked immediate interest from colonial authorities, who seized it under the pretext of preserving regional stability. Within months, the vessel vanished into state archives, and its accompanying documents were fragmented across different institutions, effectively dissolving any coherent record of its existence. The original dig site was later flooded during river control projects, erasing the context needed to interpret the find. Yet a faint echo of the powder's properties resurfaced in a 1934 memo written by a physicist who described studying anomalous metallic dust with non-thermal responses. His description mirrors the lost notes from the Tigris expedition, almost word for word. The repetition suggests that the vessel did not vanish entirely, but that its study was redirected, shielded from academic scrutiny, and folded into research realms where questions about historical accuracy become secondary to strategic potential.
The fourth relic enters the historical record through a single crate recovered from a sunken merchant vessel off the coast of Crete in 1921. Inside, divers found a set of 3 interlocking stone panels, each etched with lines so precise they appeared machined rather than carved. Later known as the Aegean Triad, these panels confounded researchers, not only because of their craftsmanship, but because when arranged in their correct sequence, the engravings formed a star map depicting constellations as they would have appeared more than 15,000 years ago. At that time, according to accepted timelines, the region was home only to scattered hunter-gatherer bands, not any culture capable of generating such astronomical knowledge. Additional anomalies surfaced during examination. The stone itself contained microscopic channels filled with a hardened resin that resisted all attempts at chemical identification. When illuminated at certain angles, the resin refracted light into concentric rings resembling diagnostic patterns found in modern optics. One researcher hypothesized that the panels once functioned as part of an early navigational or observational instrument, though he admitted privately that the technology implied by such precision simply should not have existed. The Triad's discovery should have generated a seismic shift in understanding early Mediterranean cultures, yet it instead triggered a coordinated retrieval effort led by an unidentified diplomatic consortium that claimed the artifact under maritime salvage laws. Witnesses at the port described officials arriving with pre-written paperwork and sealed containers, as though the recoveries had been anticipated in advance. Attempts by local museums to intervene were overruled, and the panels disappeared into a facility whose records end abruptly in 1940. Only a handful of annotated photographs remain, showing faint symbols along the panel's edges, symbols that match markings later discovered at sites far older and geographically distant, suggesting a network of knowledge that predated known civilizations by millennia. The possibility that the Triad links multiple ancient cultures through a shared astronomical tradition has never been explored publicly, not because evidence is lacking, but because the artifact that could anchor such a theory has been removed from history itself.
The fifth relic emerged briefly from obscurity during a Soviet-era geological survey in the Altai Mountains, where researchers uncovered a metallic sphere embedded deep within a stratum dated to nearly 40,000 years ago. The object, later dubbed the Altai sphere, measured just under 10 centimeters in diameter and was composed of an alloy unknown to 20th century metallurgy, displaying a tensile strength far beyond that of titanium.
More confounding was its flawless symmetry. Microscopic analysis revealed no seams, welds, or tooling marks, leaving investigators unable to determine how it had been formed. Some speculated that it might have crystallized naturally, but its density, far exceeding any documented mineral, rendered such theories untenable. Initial attempts to cut into the sphere produced an unexpected reaction. Instead of fracturing, the metal generated a localized acoustic vibration that caused measuring instruments to malfunction. Technicians described a faint hum, low and rhythmic, like a pulse embedded within the object itself. When subject to magnetic fields, the sphere rotated slightly, orienting towards celestial north regardless of its starting position, an ability difficult to reconcile with any known physical mechanism. These findings were quietly classified, and the sphere transferred to a restricted materials laboratory outside Novosibirsk. Official reports from the survey were rewritten to exclude any mention of anomalous discoveries. Yet fragments of the truth slipped out through private correspondence. One geophysicist wrote of the sphere's interior behaving like a closed system with stored kinetic information, a phrase that suggests a functional purpose rather than mere geological curiosity. Another noted the neutron scans hinted at internal components, arranged in a pattern eerily similar to early inertial navigation devices, technology that would not be invented for tens of thousands of years. Shortly after these letters were circulated, access to the laboratory was curtailed and the scientists reassigned under vague security directives. Today, the sphere's location is unknown. Files referencing it disappeared during administrative purges in the late 1980s, leaving only enough evidence to provoke questions with no sanctioned answers. If authentic and not a misinterpreted natural formation, the Altai sphere represents an intrusion of intelligent design into a time period where no such presence should exist, challenging the very foundation of human prehistory.
The sixth relic surfaced during a 1952 excavation beneath a collapsed synagogue in Krakow, where workers uncovered sealed lead coffer containing what became known as the Chronicle Shard. At first glance, it appeared to be a fragment of hardened clay, yet closer inspection revealed that it was a composite material far denser and more resilient than any ceramic produced in antiquity. Etched across its surface were characters resembling Paleo-Hebrew, but interwoven with unfamiliar sigils that followed a mathematical structure rather than a linguistic one. A philologist consulting on the find described the markings as an encoded chronology, noting that certain repeated clusters matched astronomical cycles rather than textual grammar. This led to the unsettling conclusion that the shard recorded events not yet understood, perhaps even not yet recognized as historical. A preliminary translation, reconstructed through private notes later leaked to an academic archive, suggested references to catastrophic sky phenomena and migrations predating any documented settlement of the region. The shard also contained a narrow groove filled with a dark metallic residue that reacted to ultraviolet light by emitting a soft red luminescence. Chemical tests identified no known alloy or organic compound capable of producing such behavior. When the residue was examined under magnification, researchers noted geometric crystallization patterns strikingly similar to modern data storage lattices. The implication that the shard preserved information in a form more advanced than symbolic writing quickly drew the attention of state security services.
The seventh relic lies at the intersection of archaeology and atmospheric science, a set of copper scrolls recovered from a buried chamber near the ruins of Tiwanaku in 1964. These scrolls, now referred to as the Andean copper leaves, were astonishing not for their age. Radiocarbon dating of associated textiles placed them around 4,000 years old, but for the precision of their embossing. Each leaf bore a lattice of intersecting lines arranged in spiraling grids, forming patterns that modern climatologists later recognized as mathematical models of long-term atmospheric oscillations. The accuracy with which these ancient artisans tracked pressure cycles and rainfall indices rivaled 20th century meteorological reconstructions, suggesting observational continuity across centuries that orthodox Andean chronology does not accommodate. Even more anomalous was the copper itself. Metallurgical analysis detected microalloying, using trace elements unavailable within the region's ore deposits, indicating either long-distance extraction networks that no archaeological survey has confirmed, or the use of metallurgical techniques lost entirely to history. Researchers also noted that when a low electrical current was applied, the scrolls emitted a faint but measurable vibrational response, as if the patterned embossing encoded frequencies rather than mere symbolic content. One researcher privately hypothesized that the leaves functioned less as documents and more as components of a large-scale environmental monitoring system, an idea swiftly dismissed at the institutional level, yet never satisfactorily disproven. Shortly after these tests, government officials invoked emergency cultural protection laws and removed the scrolls for archival stabilization. The laboratory where they had been examined was instructed to destroy its data logs, a directive that angered several researchers who later leaked fragments of their notes to academic colleagues abroad. These fragments included sketches of the spirals superimposed onto climate cycle graphs, revealing near-perfect alignment with modern models of El Niño intensity phases. Such correspondence suggests not coincidence, but deliberate encoding by a culture whose observational sophistication has been radically underestimated. The disappearance of the copper leaves has frozen the mystery in place, leaving only the question of why such knowledge, apparently empirical, benign, and remarkably advanced, was deemed too sensitive to remain in public scientific discourse. The eighth relic emerged from the wind-swept desert of the Empty Quarter, where a petroleum survey in 1979 accidentally exposed a subterranean chamber carved into a ridge of fossilized sandstone. Inside lay a single artifact, now whispered about as the Arabian Lumen Prism. At first glance, it resembled a crystalline obelisk no larger than a man's forearm, its facets polished to mirror-like smoothness by means unknown. When illuminated by ordinary light, the prism refracted nothing. Instead, it appeared to absorb illumination, darkening subtly as though storing energy. Yet when struck by the faint glow of dawn, it emitted a narrow beam of pale blue light directed consistently toward the same azimuth, regardless of orientation. Early survey notes recorded the uncanny precision of this alignment. The beam pointed to a celestial coordinate corresponding to a star position as it would have appeared roughly 7,000 years ago. The chamber housing the prism contained no inscriptions, no offerings, and no architectural markers typical of ritual contexts. Instead, its geometry suggested deliberate engineering. The walls were carved at angles that amplified the prism's dawn emission, producing interference patterns that danced across the chamber ceiling like shifting constellations. A physicist brought in to study the phenomenon remarked privately that the refracted patterns behaved like data projections, encoding positional information through variations in intensity. But before such ideas could be formally explored, the site was cordoned off under the jurisdiction of an unnamed governmental partner, and the prism transported to an undisclosed facility. The team's field photographs were confiscated, replaced with a sparse official report claiming the chamber contained non-cultural mineral formations. Nevertheless, a single surviving sketch, smuggled out by a junior geologist, shows the prism's facets inscribed with microscopic channels arranged in a repeating numerical sequence matching the orbital cycles of Sirius B, a detail no known ancient culture could have calculated. If authentic, the lumen prism indicates that its creators possessed not only advanced optical understanding, but also stellar data accessible only through sustained, high-precision observation. Its removal ensures that the implications remain unexamined, buried beneath bureaucratic silence, leaving behind only the slimmest trace of a technological inheritance that should not have existed at all.
The ninth relic inhabits the strange borderland between archaeology and neurology. A palm-sized basalt disc unearthed in 2003 during routine construction outside Jericho. Workers initially mistook it for debris, but when cleaned, the disc revealed a labyrinthine pattern carved in continuous, unbroken lines, spiraling inward toward a central depression. Nicknamed the Jericho Neurodisc, it was soon recognized as anomalous when researchers discovered that its carvings corresponded with astonishing fidelity to the electrical firing patterns recorded in the human brain's hippocampal region. The grooves mirrored oscillation sequences associated with memory storage, spatial navigation, and pre-sleep cognitive drift, knowledge far beyond the anatomical understanding of any culture traditionally placed in the region 8,000 years ago. Microscopic analysis revealed that the disk's surface had been exposed to repeated thermal modulation, suggesting deliberate heating and cooling cycles. Under infrared scanning, the basalt exhibited localized hotspots distributed exactly along the labyrinth's pathways, as though it had once functioned as a resonant device responding to subtle electrical or magnetic fields. A cognitive archaeologist proposed that the disk might have been used in rituals involving trance states, potentially acting as a primitive neural entrainment tool. Yet the precision of its geometry, with tolerances under 1/10 of a millimeter, suggested machining rather than hand carving. This contradiction pushed the artifact into an uncomfortable category, too advanced to be ceremonial, too symbolic to be mechanical, and too accurate to dismiss. Its fate shifted abruptly when an interdisciplinary team attempted to run low-frequency acoustic waves across its surface. When stimulated, the disk generated a harmonic response that produced involuntary visual impressions in several nearby researchers, described variously as geometric flashes, spatial distortions, and a sense of descending through a narrow passage. Such reactions halted further testing, but not before a government liaison intervened, classifying the disk under a public safety directive and appropriating it for neurological hazard review. All public documentation of the Neurodisk's properties was subsequently redacted, leaving only vague references to psychological interference effects. The true reason for its confiscation may lie in its unsettling implication that a prehistoric group possessed an operational understanding of cognition itself, one that modern neuroscience is only beginning to approximate. Its disappearance removes the only known link to that forgotten experiment in shaping the human mind.
The 10th and final relic surfaced only briefly before vanishing into the deepest layers of institutional silence, a fractured slab of black volcanic glass uncovered during seismic retrofitting beneath an abandoned monastery in northern Armenia. The slab, quickly dubbed the Obsidian Codex plate, was unlike any known artifact in both material and function. Its surface, impossibly smooth and reflective, bore no carvings, pigments, or inscriptions of any kind. Yet when exposed to shifting angles of natural light, faint geometric apparitions appeared within the glass itself, as though suspended beneath the surface in multiple layers. These apparitions resembled architecture, arches, columns, stairways, mapped in perspectives that defied normal spatial rules. Attempts to photograph the images failed. The reflections simply did not register on film or digital sensors, suggesting that the phenomena arose not from optical trickery, but from some interaction between the material and human perception. A team of physicists identified internal microfractures arranged in repeating ratios similar to quasi-crystalline structures, patterns not known to occur naturally in obsidian. Under polarized light, these structures generated interference fields that fluctuated with environmental conditions, creating the illusion of shifting depth. One researcher described the effect as a memory of a city embedded into stone, aligning with local legends that spoke of an ancient settlement erased by forces not of the earth. However, the codex plate grew more troubling when an art historian noticed that the phantom architecture corresponded to no known cultural style,
yet contained motifs, spiraling ramps, elevated walkways, suspended chambers, strikingly similar to speculative reconstructions of pre-glacial Eurasian civilizations proposed by fringe researchers. The monastery archives hinted at prior sightings. A 17th century manuscript referred cryptically to a dark mirror that reveals what once stood where mountains now rise. If the slab indeed preserved an encoded image of a vanished landscape, it would imply that its creators possessed methods for storing structural information far beyond symbolic representation. Before these implications could be explored, security officials intervened, citing concerns about cultural destabilization. The artifact was removed under diplomatic escort, its official designation changed to geological waste, ensuring no institution would seek its retrieval. What remains is the uneasy awareness that the codex plate might have offered a direct window into a chapter of human or pre-human history erased from collective memory. Its confiscation closes the circle formed by all 10 relics, objects that should not exist, yet briefly did, revealing a past repeatedly hidden, suppressed, or quietly absorbed into realms where truth is weighed not by evidence, but by consequence.